got an amazing speaker with us today, Dani Trudeau. So for those of you that are in the creative community in Edinburgh, you have probably come across Dani already. She's an amazing creative entrepreneur and has founded Tribe Porty, which is down in Portobello, as the name suggests, and is a co-working space that actually our host Matt also is part of as well, and many of you probably on today's call. She has also founded or just rebranded Keystone as well, which is an online program supporting female entrepreneurs to create a life of work that really works for them, helping them to start, grow or scale a business. So coming from an entrepreneurship background and working in it for the past decade, I am a massive advocate of that and supporting women, female entrepreneurs to really, really grow their businesses. So without further ado, I'm going to pass over to Dani to talk to us about matriarchy today.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that introduction. If only you could do the rest of my talk for me. No, I'm actually looking forward to it. So yes, I'm Dani, and I've really enjoyed exploring the theme of matriarch. Although I am a mother and I have founded communities that I'm kind of the head of, it's not a word that I have thought about all that much until this talk. So if you just Google the word matriarchy, you'll read on the next slide. A system of society of government ruled by a woman or women, a matriarchy run by morally superior women, which I don't know why that gets me, that morally aspect of it is a good thing, but it doesn't seem to appear in the theme of patriarchy. So in contrast, patriarchy is a system of society or government in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it. A society system in which the father is the head of the household, having authority over women and children. Which I find those words quite interesting, and just looking at your chat, it seems to resonate that, yeah, there's something about a different kind of leadership, not power over someone, but leading. And for me, that is how I am relating to and exploring the matriarch. Matriarch is about power from within, not power over. And we find the distinction between how we find the distinction between the two. Matriarchal power is not possessive and not controlling, but nurturing and harmonious with nature. It is about power with. Finding our inner authority is obviously not gendered, but I think this distinction and definition for women can be very powerful. I want to redefine and reclaim what the matriarch means. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. I really trust that statement. At my best, I am excited and motivated to go deeper into the mysteries of myself. And at my worst, I am exhausted and overwhelmed by the never-ending amount of work I have yet to do. I have, however, decided that instead of developing thick skin, I would rather keep shedding old skin for constant growth. I will take you back a bit, as the slides suggest. I was born in the Black Hills of South Dakota, and at the age of 18, I drove 2,000 miles east to North Carolina to attend university for contemporary dance. I had big dreams of becoming a dancer from the age of 7, and School of the Arts was a fine arts university, very much like Fame Academy. The schedule was brutal. I danced all day long, I then worked in the evenings, and then I went to the gym at around 11 at night to try and measure up to the impossible body expectations. At School of the Arts, every couple of months we had assessments in front of panels, and our body fat was measured. That first year of university broke me. It broke me in many ways, but especially physically. I ended up with a herniated disc and I was put on Prozac after my injury. My 12 years of hard work and discipline and dreams of becoming a dancer had burst. And I also hadn't worked on who I was without dance. So after the doctor said I couldn't keep dancing, I took night classes at a different university, and I underwent 6 epidural steroid injections to help with pain and inflammation. I then transferred to University of North Carolina at Greensboro, and I did go on to do dance education. In my 3rd year at UNCG, I got a part-time job working with children with autism. I was trained as an applied behavior analysis therapist. I really enjoyed this work, and my interest and graduate studies in somatics was really useful because a lot of the therapy was based around nonverbal communication. I found a new sense of achievement by impacting these kids' lives and their families in quite profound ways. This work turned into a consulting job position. So in 2001, I accepted, and I migrated another 3,000 miles east to Scotland. Like many young people, I rarely spoke up. I shrunk in the coercive environment of the dance world, and I neglected every attempt of communicating that my body was trying to make. Success to me was not to fail at any cost. At that time, I didn't know I could define my own version of success. School of the Arts has a policy that even after you're accepted, which is highly competitive in the first place, you have to be asked back every year of your 4-year undergraduate fine arts degree. According to Brené Brown research, what makes power dangerous is how it's used. Power over is driven by fear. Despite my injury, I was asked back, but I didn't go back. They needed me more than I needed them, a realization that totally escaped me at the time. This is power over. They had me believe that power is finite, and they used fear to protect and hoard it. Throughout my training in dance over the years, many dance teachers commented on my body regularly. Comments like how I would be a better dancer if I wasn't still a virgin, which was said to me at age 13. These acts of power over, combined with the competitive nature of dance, was damaging. And like many women, my relentless pursuit of perfection became a version of self-harm, denying my own body's needs for rest and nutrition, ignoring pain, and even inflicting pain upon myself. I can now see that in a way, my self-harm was born out of an internalized misogyny, a form of violence manifesting in self-inflicted ways. Now that might sound a bit like a leap. What does misogyny have to do with it really? I think quite a lot. I am defining misogyny as social systems or environments where women face hostility and hatred because they're women in a man's world, a historical patriarchy. Misogyny involves the part of the brain that processes emotional responses, so there's often contempt and violence in it. Perfection, self-harm, shame, submission, these are common themes for many women. Misogyny is something we practice almost unconsciously. We're embedded in a culture, and we internalize the customs and the social mores that define that culture, and then thus perpetuate it. We're all implicated, both women and men, even if we're not aware of it. To me, this is why the matriarch and patriarch are not opposite sides of the same coin. Throughout history, the stories we have been taught about women are laced in shame and deceit and submission. These wounds make us doubt ourselves. They diminish our value, lead us to divorce our bodies, or use our bodies as weapons for or against ourselves. This doubt and shame can be traced all the way back to Adam and Eve. So no matter your beliefs about religion, I'm not getting into that. The story of Adam and Eve plays out in all kinds of ways in our culture. According to the story, God created man, perfect in his image, then decided man needed a helpmate. Yes, that's what she was called and why Eve was created. Then the snake comes along and tells Eve to eat the fruit of knowledge, in particular self-knowledge. And depending on what translation you've read, the snake represents deceit or the devil. However, in other translations, snakes represent fertility and a creative life force. As snakes shed their skin, they are symbols of rebirth, transformation, immortality, and healing. I prefer that version of the story where Eve took a courageous step out of childhood and into self-knowledge by eating the apple. This was the inner power, and this interpretation of the origin story threatened the patriarch and got retold in ways to plant the seed that Eve was deceitful. She was not to be trusted, and in many ways she is man's curse. Perhaps the original sin was not a sin at all. It was leaving the comforts of childhood, stepping into adulthood and self-discovery and the fullness of adult life. I think this is what Eve brought to Adam. So much of the stories we learn and pass on and believe in depend on interpretation. So much of what we have been taught has also been written and told from a male perspective. I think it's time to reclaim our female perspective. This perspective depends on self-knowledge. I really believe this is how women can lead from within. But how? How do we lead from within? How do we find ways to repair from the inside out? We have to build an internal knowing that is different from the one that created the problems, which are often the familiar. I just want to say that again. We have to make sure we build an internal knowing. Jung calls this work of internal knowing as shadow work. So through lots and lots of inner work on myself and working with lots of other women through communities like Keystone, I have found it difficult at times, but completely, I would never want to not do any of the work that I've done. And I know some people think it sounds woo-woo or navel-gazing, but I think it's anything but soft or easy. Through my own somatic work, I've tried different kinds of therapies, mindfulness practice, meditation, lots of styles of communication, and I'm constantly exploring. A few years ago, I did a shamanic journey, and without going into all the details, what has stood out and what still lingers on physically is a heavy weight in my lower belly. I accept this as my body telling me something. During this shamanic journey, I was stuck in a mud pit, and it was chocolate brown, wet, shiny hills all around me. And every attempt to climb out ended with me getting more and more covered in mud. I felt like this mud represented my shame or my lack of power. When I finally climbed out, the pain and the weight in my lower belly stayed. This pressure was so real, I thought perhaps the shaman put stones on me. I had a quick look, no stones, she hadn't placed anything on me. In my journey, I then danced around a fire and in the dry dirt with some other older women. I then birthed a blue-black brick. And this brick in my mind specifically weighed 33 pounds. 33 pounds that somehow represents the weight of my shame. At the time, I thought that my shame was historic. I thought it was from my younger years, from the rejection of my father, who was not in my life much after the age of 2, or the rejection I felt from my stepfather, who really didn't want children, certainly not ones that were not his own, or from the shame of being sexually assaulted at age 13, or the shame of when my so-called friend drugged me and took advantage of me at 19. These bigger aggressions were layered with many other micro-assaults on me and my body. These feelings instructed behaviors and sunk deep in my cells. This furthered my detachment from my body and perpetuated the stories that women are less than, that I was less than, and that men had power over. I now realize my shame is often shared with so many other women. I'm not so unique. And actually that is a real comfort for me. We can carry the shame together and we can let go of the shame together. Inner authority is your own body's knowing and intelligence. It's how you know if a decision is right for you. Another word for inner authority is integration. My inner authority combines my thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, and it is my whole self. It's a bit heavy. It's getting lighter. So how can we individually become more integrated and collectively be more integrated in society? This has been my question that has driven my work at Tribe for the past 7 years. Finding ways to connect, nurture, and thrive as individuals, but also as a community. Our strapline at Tribe is work, make, share. And the most important word, I think, is share. It's the glue. We share a space, we share resources, we share a planet. We've created a culture that treats others as a part of a whole. This approach means there's a lot of love and care. At Tribe, you'll also find a strong community of female-run enterprises through our partner, Keystone. Keystone is a community and program which pairs business skills with wellness. We created Keystone to help women reimagine their working lives. This way of approaching work challenges the existing structures and stories we are told to believe in. The program and community is centered around finding your own inner authority. We have found that this kind of community is so needed. We have been surprised and overwhelmed with the number of women coming to us. I think Keystone is proof that we need these safe spaces to explore the challenges that women often face. And by claiming a new power, a new definition of power and leadership and success, we hope to positively impact both women and men. If we no longer want to be the co-creators of the old stories, we have to do the inner work. The old stories are about power over each other, power over the planet. And as we can see, this way of power no longer serves us. I might argue that it never really did. Perhaps some people do not want women to eat from the tree of self-knowledge, but as women, we know it in our bodies if we listen. I am constantly trying to find ways of power with. This is living life in relationship with others and the earth. In the Lakota language of South Dakota, I is not a noun, but a verb. The I is not still, is constantly moving, interacting in relation with one another. To me, this wisdom is the inner knowing, the knowledge that everything is connected and you maintain curiosity with others and not dominance over. I wish for all of us to anchor ourselves in the strength of self-knowledge and compassion and find your own kind of power for good. Find practice and community that integrates all of you and goes in before pushing out. Because as cheesy as it sounds, I think healing the self and healing the world go hand in hand. I will leave you with the words of Sister Joan Chittister. Our role in life is to bring the light of our own souls to dim places around us. Thank you.
Wow. That was absolutely amazing, Dani. Thank you so much. I think it's just been added to the chat box, but powerful, absolutely powerful and so honest. Thank you for being so open, honest with us, taking us on that journey. And I think there's a lot of things that has really, really made me think. And we'll open up to questions in a second. So if anybody's got any questions for Dani or any comments, actually, please put them in the chat box now. I think one quote that really resonated with me actually at the start is the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are. So I'm going to kick off with a little bit of a question for you, Dani. What are some of those key things, 3 key things maybe, that have enabled you through all of that journey that you've talked us through to really find your own inner authority? Big question, I know.
Let me get the question right. 3 key things that have led me to find my inner authority.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Led you, empowered you, whatever word you would use that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I've always tended to go in. I don't know if that's introversion or whatever you want to label it. I have spent a lot of time on my own. I'm quite happy on my own, in my own space. And I like to think about things. And I think as much as dance kind of helped, in a way, made me divorce my body and come back to it, I think I've always known there's wisdom in my body, and I've trusted that my body knows what's going on before my mind does. So if I learn to tap into it and listen to that, then I feel like there's a lot of wisdom in that. And it does take practice, but I think I've always known that somehow, or believed in that. So I think, yeah, that kind of mind-body connection, which in some ways I think is your inner authority. Yeah, if we're not, we tend to separate ourselves out so much, and that can be quite displacing. So you're listening to things and you don't know where you are in all of that. And I think that's how I describe the kind of inner authority, is that mind-body knowing.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else that's really, really helped you on that journey of discovery and to where you are now? I mean, I'm so inspired by the journey that you've taken. You were starting off at dancing, I didn't know that, and now to the incredible businesses that you've started to help others on that journey too.
It's funny because I definitely I felt like I failed for a really long time with dance, and as some people know me, I've only recently started dancing again, but in a very different way, in an unprescribed, free, in the park with headphones on, dancing around like a total nutter. And I love it so much. And I've let go of that feeling of failing, which is ridiculous anyways. I mean, it was an injury. So yeah.
Amazing. There's some amazing comments coming.
Yeah, really lovely.
Coming up in the box. So pure and passionate. Thank you for your realness. Amazing. A great example of leadership from within. Talking about expectations on women, which tend to be different from men, of course. How do we break out of expectations and reach for more, do you think?
Yeah, I use the word redefine a lot, and I think it's helpful for me because naturally when we see something, we look to replicate it because that's what we've been shown, that's what we've grown up with, that's what's going in. But I think if we can shift that out of the way and keep going back in, then you do have the ability to create your own your own versions of things. So I like to just kind of tell myself it's wide open, it can be anything, and that's quite exciting for me in how I think about changing.
Absolutely. Thank you. And there's another question in here from Laura as well. So Dani, do you have any advice for someone who wants to build their own nourishing and empowering group or social circle, a positive space to share commonalities? Any tips for anybody that wants to create their own community or tribe, which I love as a word?
Yeah, I love it. It doesn't have to be complicated. And I have different groups. I am quite lucky, I think. The networks are great. But you can start with one or two good pals and just commit to, set some guidelines out. So why do you want to meet? I want to meet to have good conversations about inner work, or have good conversations about creativity, and just commit to it. That's showing up regularly to work on something that's meaningful for you. It can be as simple as that. Get 3-4 folks. I have an accountability group, which we talk about work, but it's very integrated to the rest of our lives. I have the kind of move to feel group that we dance and we talk about, how we're feeling in our body, and dance out things that are stuck. It doesn't have to be complicated. Put a shout out for 3 or 4 women. I would say collectively come up with a really loose structure and some guidelines and kind of a mission around why you're meeting. There's lots of good information out there, accountability groups, coaching circles, whatever you want to call them, and they can totally be your pals, or be someone that you really like and say, look, I would love to meet with you and 2 other people every 2 weeks to discuss X, Y, Z, and you would be surprised. I think those communities, like, I know it's part of the work that I do, but I believe in them so much, and they can change everything.
Absolutely. I think sometimes as well, you know, if you find a couple of people, like you say, and then you start to put that out there, it automatically comes back to you. And those people, they are attracted to that activity in that group. So absolutely, but you've managed it so well, obviously. Rebecca, I'm going to come to you. Any questions or any other questions in the chat that you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, this is an interesting one from Julia. And I guess going back to what you were saying earlier about inner authority and kind of your knowledge of yourself. Julia asked, how much do you feel that you've had to change your expectations of yourself over your journey?
Of course. I don't know, some of it's probably just age as well. You know, I was super ambitious and very driven. Although now I know that part of that was like a coping mechanism. It wasn't necessarily because I'm amazing. It was like, those were the things that I found to get through things. And also being young, sometimes when you're known for something. So I came from a small city, and I was quite well known in it for my dancing. And then I went to quite a high performing school of the arts, where I was a tiny little fish in a very big ocean. And yeah, sometimes you're on a path and your identity is what it is because of the environment you're in, not necessarily because that is who you are. So of course I've changed expectations of myself, and I constantly am as well. You know, I'm constantly challenging, trying to be a leader in the right kind of way, or the kind of leader that I want to be. But even calling myself a leader is quite uncomfortable, but it's then like I would advise that to someone else. So it's, yeah. Good questions are better than good answers.
Yeah, I really like really interesting what you're saying about being a leader and kind of struggling to call yourself a leader. And what do you think kind of like has to change more widely to kind of start getting us to question that concept of leadership and what leadership is, to make it more democratic or make it more about power with?
Yeah, we had a good chat in the group before, and I love that, and everybody in there was saying that when they think of a role model or a leader, it's not someone loud and up on a pedestal, and actually what damage that does of putting anyone on a pedestal, because we're all human. We all have good qualities and bad qualities, and better at some things than others. So I think it's more of kind of relearning, or maybe peeling back what we think is a good leader more than anything else, and being okay with that. It does take some strength to not get sucked into what a lot of people hold as someone powerful or in a leadership position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Couldn't agree.
Had enough examples of bad leadership, right? So like, why do we want to be like that?
Absolutely. I think it is absolutely breaking down the stereotypical leader that we see. You know, I mean, there's more female leaders coming up globally, you know, that are doing an amazing job. And I think we need to, it was a conversation as well in our breakout room, but we need to celebrate our own superpowers, right? And that is different from traditional male leadership qualities. We need to absolutely celebrate that and use that to the power. And I think a leader, if you think back on your own leadership journeys or people that you've been led by, it's definitely those people that have held you up, right? Not taking the credit. It's not been a top-down piece, but it's those people that are trying to give you a hand up. And that's exactly what you are doing, Dani. So I just want to say a huge thank you for your time today and taking us through that talk. It was a really, really powerful talk. And I know it's quite difficult to be that honest and that vulnerable in front of a crowd like this. So I just really appreciate it. I think we'll have all got something from that talk. If there was one thought that you would like to leave people with off the back of this talk, what would it be?
Oh goodness. Yeah, I think as I don't want to be too cliche, but yeah, be the change that you want to see. Like, if if you want something different, if you want to see something different, be that. And then the opportunities to explore yourself is quite fascinating. I feel like it is the ultimate job of a lifetime, because we are complex creatures and we have layers of stuff. And every time I try a new kind of approach or therapy or way of thinking, it just blows my mind of it. So yeah, do the inner work. It's for you, it's not for anybody else, and you are the one that's going to benefit from it. But also, that's how we'll see real change.